We were at my boss's anniversary party in Houston, some over-the-top celebration marking 20 years of the firm's existence. It was held at this rented-out rooftop ballroom downtown, the kind of place where valet drivers wear tuxes and waiters bring you hors d'oeuvres so tiny you need 3 to feel like you ate anything. There was an open bar, live jazz, gold foil balloons, and just enough fake smiles to make your jaw ache by midnight. I wasn't in the mood to socialize, but Claire insisted we go. "It's important to show face," she said that morning while curling her hair in the mirror. "Besides, you never come to my events." I couldn't argue with that. I skipped a few. Work, fatigue, excuses. Maybe part of me was just tired of pretending to belong in her world. Claire was the polished one, the high heels, perfect posture, the kind of woman who turned mundane client dinners into high-gloss networking events. She looked the part tonight, too. Black dress with a subtle shimmer, gold earrings that caught the light when she tilted her head, and her hair twisted into one of those effortless-looking buns that probably took 45 minutes and a YouTube tutorial. I watched her from across the room as I sipped whiskey that tasted like melted coins. She was laughing, holding court with a group of her coworkers. I caught myself smiling. Even after everything, all the fights about time, the stress, the weird distance between us lately, I still thought she was beautiful. But lately, I'd started to wonder whether I was the only one who thought that. Started slow, subtle. The way her smiles didn't quite reach her eyes anymore when she looked at me. The way she scrolled through her phone late at night with her screen tilted just out of my view. Little things. Things you notice but push away because admitting the alternative would tear your world in two. And then came the joke. We were standing near the bar with a cluster of Claire's coworkers. 2 women in matching business casual, a junior associate named Darren, and a guy named Mark, tall, tan, with that permanent smirk of someone who thinks they're funnier than they are. Claire had mentioned him before in passing. She said he was harmless. A goof. Nothing to worry about. Mark raised his glass and said, with that drunk but aware tone that makes everything sound like a dare, "So tell me, Claire, how many times have you stayed at the Harborview Hotel on a Wednesday?" Time didn't stop, but I swear everything slowed down. There was laughter, but not the kind that comes naturally. This wasn't the reaction to a punchline. It was the kind of laugh people give when they're waiting to see how someone else reacts first. Nervous, controlled, like everyone was on stage and reading from a script they hoped wouldn't explode. Claire laughed too, louder than she needed to. "Mark!" she gasped, swatting his arm. "That's not even funny." "Come on," he chuckled, glancing at the others like he'd just lobbed a perfect grenade. "I'm just teasing. You're the one who's always entertaining clients." His fingers made air quotes around the words. The group laughed again, this time more freely, probably relieved that she didn't explode. Someone else changed the subject immediately, something about how overpriced the shrimp tower was, but the air felt thinner after that. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't check it right away. It was one of those phantom vibrations you almost ignore, but something tugged at me. I glanced down casually, like I was just bored, and there it was. New transaction, $279. 50 Harborview Hotel. The timestamp read 7:41 p.m. The same hotel, the same night, same damn moment the joke was made. I looked at the screen for a solid 5 seconds. Not moving, not breathing. I've had a lot of small moments in life that passed without ceremony and later turned out to matter, but this one was different. It was loud, final, defining. The kind of moment that splits your memory into before and after. Claire must have noticed me looking at my phone, because without missing a beat she leaned in and said casually to the group, "Oh, that's a corporate booking for a client. Last minute reschedule." She smiled, confident, unshaken. Her voice didn't waver, and she even added a little roll of her eyes, like it was all so boring and routine. "You know how it is. End of quarter." The others nodded, some too quickly, like they needed to believe it just as much as I was trying to. But I know her voice. That cadence when she's rehearsed something in her head. She doesn't trip over the words. She nails the landing, but it's too perfect, too timed, like she'd run it through a dozen times in front of the mirror, preparing for this exact moment. I said nothing. I didn't want to cause a scene. Not here. Not yet. But my ears were ringing, and my heart was suddenly beating in this chaotic, off-rhythm thump thump thump. I stared at the transaction again. Room charge. Same hotel. Wednesday night. Just like Mark said. The Harbor View wasn't a place I'd ever stayed at, but I knew it. It was on the edge of the city, overlooking the bay. A boutique hotel known for discretion, minimal paper trails, and swanky rooms with mood lighting. The kind of place where you brought someone you weren't supposed to be seen with. The kind of place Claire would have never needed to go. Not unless she had a reason. We stayed another hour, maybe two. I can't remember what was said. I smiled when I was supposed to. Nodded. Laughed when someone made a joke about company holiday bonuses. But my mind was somewhere else. Stuck. Looping. Replaying that damn joke, her smooth lie, and that payment notification. The worst part? No one else seemed surprised. That look in Mark's eyes when he made the joke. The awkward glances that passed between her co-workers afterward. That wasn't new information to them. That was an inside joke they'd been sitting on for weeks, maybe longer. They weren't laughing with me. They were laughing around me. And Claire, my wife, the woman I shared a mortgage and a mattress with, had a lie ready before the punchline had even landed. I didn't confront her in the car. Not that night. Not even the next morning. Something inside me had shifted, and it was like my body instinctively knew. This was no longer the time for questions. This was time for watching, listening, waiting, because whatever game she was playing, it had rules, and I was finally starting to understand them. The ride home was quiet. Not silent in the way where you're both tired, or zoning out, or just enjoying the comfort of being together. This was a weighted silence. Like both of us were balancing something fragile on our laps, trying not to let it crack open before we reached the driveway. Claire kept her eyes on the road. I watched her hands grip the steering wheel, tight, knuckles pale. Her jaw was set, just enough to notice if you were paying attention. And I was paying attention to everything. She didn't bring up the Harbor View joke. Neither did I. But it was hanging there between us, like smoke you couldn't wave away. She made a couple small comments. How nice the band was. How weird it was to see Mark that tipsy. But nothing stuck. Just filler noise. Like she needed to keep talking so I wouldn't start asking questions. I didn't give her that chance. I just watched her. And I thought about the last few months. It's funny how your brain replays things once suspicion worms its way in. You see everything differently. Moments that once seemed normal become red flags waving in a hurricane. Like how she'd changed the password on her phone back in July. We used to know each other's codes, not because we snooped but because it just never mattered. We'd use each other's phones to look up dinner recipes or Google movie times. It was normal, casual, easy. Then one night, I picked up her phone to set a reminder while she was in the shower, and it locked me out. She'd changed the password. When I asked her about it, she smiled and said, "Oh, I updated it after that weird data leak thing. Just being cautious." I nodded, didn't press. But it didn't sit right. That same month, her location sharing disappeared. She used to keep it on, we both did. It was just practical. We liked knowing when the other was heading home or if someone was running late. But one night, I checked to see if she was already on her way so I could time dinner. And she was just gone. "Must have glitched," she'd said when I asked. "Weird. I'll fix it." She never did. Then there was the phone itself, always face down, always within reach. If I so much as leaned toward it, she suddenly needed it. Like it was some sensitive government device and I wasn't cleared for access. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. Everyone gets more private over time. Maybe she was just setting boundaries. We'd been together long enough to stop being glued to each other, right? But then Wednesdays became girls' night. Every Wednesday, like clockwork. The first time, she said her friend Lena had just gotten dumped. "She's having a hard time," Claire said. "And we're doing weekly support dinners. Just us girls, you know?" Of course. I said I understood. Because I did. I even told her to give Lena my best. But then it wasn't just Lena. The friend changed every few weeks. Lena, then Tanya, Then a work friend who doesn't like to be named. It got blurry. And each week she came home later. At first it was around 10 p.m. Then 11. Eventually, she started slipping in after midnight. Lost track of time, she'd say. Drinks after dinner. You know how it is. Sometimes she'd be glowing, flushed cheeks. This vibrant energy. Other nights, she was drained, quiet, staring off like she was still somewhere else. I never got a full story. Just snippets. Vagueness wrapped in reassurance. That's when the dresses started showing up. New ones. Pricey ones. Not the usual TJ Maxx or Nordstrom rack finds she used to love either. These were boutique labels. Tags I'd never seen before. I'd open our closet and see them hanging there like strangers. One had a slit that ran nearly to the hip. Another was silk and sheer enough to make me pause. When I asked her about them, she grinned and said, "Self-care. Babe, I work hard. Gotta treat myself." And then the lingerie. We hadn't been close in a while. Not really. So I noticed when new bras and matching sets started appearing in the laundry. Things I'd never seen her wear for me. Expensive lace, bold colors. Not her usual style. But maybe she was just buying them for herself. Right? That's what I told myself. Again and again. Even when the scent of her perfume changed. For years she wore something light, jasmine maybe. Subtle, floral. Something that lingered on pillows and made the sheets smell like her. But suddenly it was citrus, sharp, almost spicy. Something bold. I'd kissed her goodnight one evening, and the smell was so strong it burned my nose. She said the old one had been discontinued. Trying something new. New. That word started circling my brain like a vulture. I noticed changes in our toll road statements, too. We had an easy tag account that logged every trip. I checked it once by accident while paying a fine, and saw that every Wednesday, Claire was using the coastal toll road. Not the one that led to downtown where her dinners supposedly were. The coastal route didn't go to Lena's or Tanya's, or any of the downtown restaurants she mentioned. But you know where it did lead? The direction of the Harbor View Hotel. The same hotel from Mark's joke. The same hotel where I'd just seen a charge hit my phone. So here we were. Driving home from a party where my wife had laughed off an inside joke I wasn't in on, covered it with a lie I wasn't meant to question, and trusted that I'd go on pretending this version of reality still made sense. The city lights blurred past my window, glowing through raindrops that had started to hit the glass. The rain was light, steady, rhythmic. Claire didn't say anything. Neither did I. But in my chest, something had shifted. Not snapped. Not broken. Just shifted. Like a puzzle piece had finally found the spot it was meant to fill. I think I knew then, really knew, that something was happening. Not suspected. Not feared. Knew. She was seeing someone. I didn't have a name. I didn't have photos or messages. But I had the trail. The breadcrumbs. The missed calls, the new dresses, the tolls, the perfume, the hidden phone. The way she'd changed. And I knew I had two options. Confront her now. Rage, accuse, demand answers, or wait. Watch. Observe. Because whatever this was, it wasn't casual. It wasn't a one-off mistake. It had structure, planning, routine. And that meant it could be exposed. Claire thought she was smart, careful, subtle. But tonight something slipped. That joke, that hotel charge, it cracked the surface. And now I wasn't just watching anymore. I was paying attention. After that night, everything changed. Not outwardly, not right away. I didn't storm into the bedroom demanding answers. I didn't snoop through her phone while she was in the shower. I didn't even bring up the harbor view. But inside, something had flipped. I was done giving her the benefit of the doubt. I started noticing patterns more than ever. How she'd disappear into the bathroom with her phone right after dinner. How she laughed a little too hard at texts she never mentioned. How her calendar now had color-coded meetings every Wednesday from 6 to midnight. Blocks of time labeled with vague words like consult or dinner, so on. She used to ask if I wanted her to pick something up on the way home. Now she just texted, "Home late. Don't wait up." Every time she went out, she looked immaculate. tailored outfits, heels that made her taller than she usually liked to be, fresh blowouts, glossy lips. It wasn't dinner with friends attire. It was someone's watching her attire. That someone just wasn't me. By the second week, I started going into the office earlier and staying later. Not because I had to, but because I needed to feel like I was taking control of something again. I stopped waiting around for her to come home. Stopped pretending things were normal. It was during one of those late nights, maybe around 8:30, that I noticed something strange in the office parking lot security feed. My company installed cameras a few months back after a string of break-ins. Most of us ignored them. The building wasn't in a sketchy area, and nothing had happened since. But that night, as I passed by the security desk on the way out, the guard, Miguel, was watching playback of a fender bender in the lot. I paused behind him, watching a blur of headlights and taillights bump against each other. "What's that from?" I asked casually. He pointed. "Last Wednesday, some guy in a black SUV clipped a pole. Insurance asked for footage. And I don't know why I did it. Maybe instinct, but I asked, mind if I scroll through that night? Just curious." He shrugged and slid the mouse over. "Knock yourself out." The footage was divided into time blocks. I scrubbed forward, not sure what I was even looking for, just following a hunch. And then, just past 9 p.m. there she was, Claire, getting out of the passenger side of a black SUV. She was dressed in that deep green coat I didn't recognize, with her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail and heels that clicked on the pavement even through the grainy audio. She didn't look around like someone lost or confused. She knew exactly where she was going. She walked toward the side entrance of the private club next to our office building, a sleek, members-only place called the Meridian. It was built for people who wanted privacy. Dim lighting, blacked-out windows, valet parking around the back. I'd never even been inside. A few seconds later, a man joined her. Tall, slim, wearing a charcoal coat and dark slacks. I couldn't see his face, his back was to the camera, but I saw the way they hugged. Not a friendly, one-arm, side hug. This was slow, close, familiar. Her hands curled around the back of his neck. His rested on the small of her back for far too long. I sat there, frozen, as they stood together in that embrace. The way she leaned into him, the way she tilted her face slightly toward his chest. It was mate. Safe, like she'd done it a dozen times before. After a minute or two, they turned toward the side entrance. She looked up at him, smiled. Then they disappeared inside. Miguel gave me a weird glance. "Everything good, man?" I forced a nod. "Yeah, just thought I recognized someone. Thanks." I left the building on autopilot, my mind reeling. I replayed the footage over and over again in my head. Her green coat, the way she clung to him, that smile. She told me she was having dinner with an old coworker, said she needed to reconnect with old contacts, in case things shifted at work. But she never mentioned the Meridian. And she sure as hell didn't say she was getting out of a man's car in my office parking lot, heading into a club 2 doors down from where I spent 10 hours a day. I drove home in silence. Didn't turn on the radio. Didn't check my phone. Didn't cry. It wasn't a tear kind of night. It was a staring through the windshield wondering if you're awake kind of night. When I walked through the door, Claire was already home, sitting on the couch with her laptop open and a mug of tea on the coffee table like nothing was off. She glanced up and smiled. "Hey, you're late. Everything okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, just work." She returned to her laptop. I stood there for a long moment watching her, trying to reconcile the woman in the parking lot footage with the one curled up under our throw blanket. She wasn't even shaken, not tense, not guilty. That was the scariest part. How normal she looked. How *led she'd become at this double life. The next day, I called the club under a fake name, said I was interested in a membership, asked about their guest policy. The guy on the phone told me that non-members were allowed if they were invited by a sponsor and signed in at the desk. I asked if that list was digital. He said yes. "Would you be able to tell me if a guest named Claire Anderson came in last Wednesday?" I'm planning a surprise for her and want to make sure she's been there before. He paused, typing. Yes, he said. Signed in at 9:13 p.m. Under a member named Anthony. Last name redacted per privacy policy. I didn't need the last name. I had the first, Anthony. And I had a timestamp, pattern. Claire had arrived with Anthony, entered the club, stayed for several hours, and left, according to security footage, just after 1 a.m. Wearing his coat. It was a long, dark overcoat with sharp shoulders. Not hers, not something she would have worn in. I saw her in it as they walked out. He handed it to her. She slipped into it easily, like it wasn't the first time. He walked her to the SUV. She kissed him on the cheek. Then they drove off. And just like that, the theory was gone. The suspicion, confirmed. The lie, visible. I had footage. I had timestamps. I had her wrapped in another man's coat. There was no room left for doubt. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't insecurity. This was infidelity. Caught, clear, documented. And yet, I didn't confront her that night either. I don't know why. Maybe part of me still wanted to hold onto the last shred of my dignity. Maybe I needed to be sure. Maybe it wasn't enough to see it. I needed her to admit it. But what I knew was this. I would never see her the same way again. No matter what she said next. After watching that footage, something in me hardened. The version of me that still wanted to believe, still wanted to ask why before how, was gone. In its place was someone quieter, colder, methodical. I realized then that whatever Claire was doing, she was doing it with enough planning to make sure I stayed in the dark. If I wanted the truth, the full truth, I'd have to be even more deliberate than she was. I started with her bag. It wasn't a plan at first. More like instinct. She'd gone out to yoga on a Sunday morning, leaving her work tote on the kitchen counter. I don't snoop. I've never been that guy. But something about the way she tossed it down, like she wasn't even worried, like she knew I wouldn't look, it felt like a dare. Inside, at first, it was the usual chaos: receipts, lipstick, headphones. But tucked into the inside zipper was a cream-colored envelope with a gold seal. First, I thought it was an invitation. It wasn't. It was a letter from the Harborview Hotel thanking her for a romantic weekend for two, and including a printed certificate for spa treatments, complimentary breakfast, and a discount on private balcony dinners. It was dated 3 weeks prior, one of her Wednesdays. My hands shook as I held it. I put it back exactly as I'd found it, sealed perfectly, like nothing had happened. But the words burned themselves into my memory. That night, while she showered, I sat at the dining table with my laptop and opened her email. She'd always been logged in on the shared computer. She must have forgotten. Most of her inbox was clean, too clean. But the trash folder wasn't empty. It was filled with fragments, deleted confirmations, half-draft emails, automated thank yous, hotel bookings, spa reservations, candlelit dinner upgrades. I clicked one at random. The subject line read, "Your Harborview reservation confirmation. King-size bed. Ocean view. Bonus points added to her loyalty account. We look forward to welcoming you and your guest." The guest name field was blank. I scrolled through 3 more. Same pattern. Same Wednesdays. Same hotels, same perks. In her calendar, she'd blocked those nights out with fake conference rooms, names that didn't exist anywhere in her company. One entry literally read, "Client meeting room 6B," for a building that didn't have a 6th floor. It was like staring at a map she thought she'd drawn in invisible ink. Piece by piece, the picture formed. During lunch breaks at work, I started calling places she mentioned: restaurants, conference centers, gyms. "Hi, I'm confirming a reservation for Claire Anderson," I'd say. She asked me to check. Most of the time, they had no record of her. Or they'd say she'd booked for 2 and canceled at the last minute. By the end of that week, I had a folder on my desktop titled simply, "C." Inside were **TS, receipts, PDFs of her deleted emails. I even clipped the security footage from Miguel, saving it onto a flash drive. Every piece was dated, labeled, filed. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but having it made me feel less like I was drowning. It wasn't just the logistics I uncovered. It was the int asterisk Macy. She and Anthony had been careful, but not careful enough. Buried in her deleted items were messages from an unlisted address. One she must have made just for him. The tone wasn't overtly romantic, no hearts or I love yous. But it was familiar, teasing. Inside jokes about ocean nights. References to Wednesdays. Even code words for the hotel. I stopped sleeping through the night. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, the glow of my laptop burning my eyes as I read her emails in the dark. I wasn't looking for evidence anymore. I had evidence. I was looking for something that would explain why. Something that would make it make sense. But there was nothing. Just this other version of her. Someone who laughed differently, dressed differently, smelled differently. Someone who lied without blinking and planned her fake meetings with the same precision she used to plan our vacations. The hardest part wasn't the cheating. It was realizing how easily she'd erased me from her world. One Thursday evening, I came home early. She was in the kitchen, humming to herself while making tea. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She reached for it so fast the mug rattled. "Everything okay?" I asked. She smiled, that same smooth smile. "Yeah, just a client thing." Client thing. I looked at her then, really looked. The green coat from the footage hung by the door. Her hair was freshly blown out. She had that glow again, like someone had just whispered something exciting in her ear. And she was calm. Too calm. Like she had no idea how much I already knew. That night, while she slept, I opened the folder on my laptop and stared at it. Screensh asterisk TS. Receipts. The hotel letter. Her spa certificate. The emails. It was all there. It didn't make me feel better. It made me feel hollow. The next day, I added one more file. A spreadsheet. Dates, locations, charges, toll roads, hotel stays, times she left and returned. Notes on what she'd said those nights. Pattern emerged so clearly it made me sick. I could predict her next meeting before she even said it. I began to withdraw from her, not out of spite, but because every conversation felt fake. I'd watch her pour wine and ask me about my day, and I'd answer like we were strangers sitting next to each other on a plane. Polite, detached. She didn't notice at first. Maybe she thought I was stressed from work. Maybe she didn't care. A week later, at another evening event, some small awards dinner for her department, I overheard two of her colleagues whispering near the bar. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but they weren't exactly subtle. "Wednesdays at the ocean." One of them snickered. "She's bold. I'll give her that." "Yeah," the other said. "Poor guy has no clue." They laughed quietly, clinking their glasses. I stood there, a foot away, invisible. It hit me then, not just the betrayal but the humiliation. They knew. All of them. They'd been laughing at me for months, maybe years, while I sat at home waiting for her. The joke at the anniversary party wasn't a slip-up. It was a punchline. I was the punchline. I excused myself, walked outside into the humid Houston night, and stood under the orange glow of a street lamp trying to steady my breathing. My hands were shaking so hard I had to jam them into my pockets. For the first time, the anger eclipsed the pain. I realized then that the betrayal wasn't just private, it was public. I was living in an illusion while she played out an entirely different story. I wasn't just being cheated on, I was being mocked, and that humiliation cut deeper than the affair itself. After that night at the awards dinner, after I heard her colleagues whisper and laugh about her Wednesdays at the ocean, I stopped wondering whether I was imagining things. The denial died completely, but something else bloomed in its place. Resolve. Until then, I'd been quiet, careful, gathering evidence in private, moving like someone who still thought this could be salvaged or at least explained. But now I saw it clearly. This wasn't just Claire's betrayal. It was a theater, one she performed in every week. I wasn't just the husband she was cheating on. I was the prop. So I did the only thing I could do. I changed. Not overnight. Not with dramatics. Just slowly. I stopped asking her where she was going. I stopped trying to guess when she'd be home. I didn't wait up. I didn't text. I gave her all the rope she needed. No more questions, no interruptions, no tension. Just permission. And that, ironically, was when she started to falter. She noticed, of course. She'd walk in late on Wednesdays, cheeks flushed, heels in hand, and find me watching a documentary or cleaning out the kitchen drawer. I'd look up, nod, and go back to whatever I was doing. She'd wait, like she expected me to ask something. Anything. But I never did. That made her nervous. I could feel it in the way she lingered around me more, asking about my schedule, offering to cook, suggesting weekend trips, testing the water to see if the silence meant distance or discovery. But I gave her nothing, until something happened at her office that finally began to shake her world. Not from me, but from the very thing she had built her second life around. It started with a headline. Her company wasn't a huge one, but it was connected, tight-knit, high-performing, and full of internal politics. One morning, while scrolling through a local business blog on my phone, I saw a small piece about an HR audit happening at Claire's firm. Something about misused corporate resources. I didn't think much of it until 2 days later when Claire came home early. Eyes wide, jaw tense, laptop clutched under her arm. She dropped her bag and muttered, "I might need a lawyer." I looked up from the couch. What happened? She hesitated. There's been confusion at work. Some contractor accounts were flagged for unusual charges. Hotel bookings, spa packages. Someone made purchases through internal vendor codes, and it's triggered an audit. Were you involved? She looked at me, and for a second, I saw a flicker of that same cold calculation I'd seen in the parking lot footage. Then she smiled. Not warm, but practiced. Of course not. They think it was an old coworker's account. Someone who doesn't even work there anymore. It's just a clerical thing. Clerical thing. That's what she called a spreadsheet full of charges to the same hotels she snuck off to every week. I said nothing, just nodded and went back to reading. But something had shifted. For the first time, she wasn't in control. She was panicked, scattered. Her lies weren't smooth anymore. Her hair wasn't as done. Her nails chipped. She'd stay up late, muttering about policy violations and email logs. And I saw her retype the same message to HR 5 times, each version trying a different tone. Apologetic, professional, defensive. The walls were closing in. A week later, she told me she might be suspended pending review. "They're not saying it's me," she explained, hands shaking as she stirred her tea. "They're just saying I had access to a code that got used. It's just procedural." But I could see it on her face. It wasn't procedural anymore. It was personal. She was sweating. Not because she cared about us, but because she cared about how she looked. Claire's career was her identity. Her job title wasn't something she put on LinkedIn. It was who she thought she was. And now it was under threat. She spent her nights crafting statements for HR instead of spending them with Anthony. She paced the kitchen with her earbuds in, whispering into voice notes. I listened through the wall as she hissed, "No, you don't understand. I didn't book anything under my name. It was his code. He said it was fine." I never heard who she was talking to, but I knew. It was Anthony, the man from the parking lot, the code owner, the hotel companion. And now he was inconvenient, dead weight, a liability. I started sleeping more soundly after that. For once, I didn't need to dig. Her life was unraveling all on its own. One morning, she looked at me across the breakfast table, her eyes *T. "I think someone's trying to throw me under the bus," she said. "Why would they do that?" She hesitated. Then, "Because they're scared. They know if they go down, I go down with them." That was the closest she'd ever come to admitting the truth. I looked at her for a long second, then nodded. "That makes sense." She blinked. "You believe me?" "Sure," I said. "Why wouldn't I?" I think that scared her more than anger would have, because it meant I wasn't resisting anymore. I wasn't trying to fix it. I wasn't shocked. I was gone emotionally, mentally, and she knew it. The next few days she tried harder. She brought home dinner, offered to book a couple's massage, said she wanted us to reset, like we were a phone with a glitch and not a marriage she'd burned down to the foundation. I kept playing along. I nodded, smiled, made small talk. But in the background, I was making moves of my own. I opened a separate bank account, quietly, discreetly, rented a small apartment across town under a flexible lease, transferred important documents, passport, insurance, medical records, to a safe deposit box in my name, printed every file from the folder on my laptop, hard copies, labeled, indexed. I even bought a burner phone, not because I was planning anything criminal, just because I didn't trust her not to snoop once her world started fully collapsing. She still thought she was in control. But now, so was I. One evening, while she was upstairs on a call, I walked into the garage, sat in my car, and plugged in the flash drive. I rewatched the security footage for what had to be the 50th time. There she was again, getting out of the SUV, smiling up at him, walking through the shadows with her hand on his back. Only this time I didn't feel the sting in my chest. I felt ready. The grief was gone. The need for answers had been buried. All that remained was resolve. Let her panic. Let HR come knocking. Let Anthony throw her under the bus. Let the walls close in. I'd already made my choice. She just didn't know it yet. The HR scandal broke. Claire tried to spin it, called Anthony an old acquaintance, claimed the hotel charges were misunderstandings, but I recognized him instantly from the footage. While she scrambled to protect her title and reputation, I watched her unravel. She wasn't worried about us, only about losing the image she'd worked so hard to fake. And in that moment, I realized she feared judgment more than she feared losing me. I acted without confrontation, quietly opened a new account, signed the lease on my apartment, filed away every receipt, email, and hotel record. While Claire stayed up writing HR defenses, I exited her life in silence. 2 years later, when I'd already built a new one, she showed up, tearful, begging. I said nothing, just closed the door, because by then, I'd learned, peace is louder than any apology. And freedom? That's something you never return.